Hey everybody, my name is Patrick and I own MacDonald Timing, and today we're going to talk about complexity. Yeah, so this was a requested topic, and I've actually shot this once or twice, and one time I didn't like the sound, but one time I didn't really like what I ended up saying over the course of the video. Complexity is, in and of itself, a complex topic, because what I find complex might not be complex for the average person watching the channel or anything along those lines. Like, it's tricky to figure out what is going to be complex for any individual person. So I'll tell you, like, the most complex thing that I deal with right now is actually nothing to do with me. It's my guys. It's my techs. You know, they're independent contractors. They're traveling not in a van. And so they need to go to venues with everything they need and not a whole lot that they don't. You know, so they're not traveling with 6 tripods in case everything goes wrong. You know, like that's they need to have a really compact kit. And so I work really hard to make sure that they have a box with everything that they need in it and really nothing that they don't. And that's tricky. It just takes time, and every different venue can be different too. So during cross country season, it's a little bit more regulated, but in some track meets they go to, they have power right by the finish line. Sometimes they need to have 2 or 3 cables because we're running it halfway across the field. So all that little stuff, like I want to make sure that they have everything they need, kind of nothing that they don't, and then that they have backups of a few things. So they always have 2 cameras. They always got 2 switches, power over Ethernet switches. They always have, their complement of Ethernet cables, and then a couple of extra, and maybe an extra start sensor or antenna or something along those lines. But like, they're not going out with just tons and tons of stuff. So that is actually the most complex thing that I deal with on a regular basis right now. But that's kind of not that important, and that's really not why I was asked the question. So I view complexity in 2 terms. I view front-end complexity, and then I view back-end complexity differently. Front-end complexity is kind of all the stuff that a coach or an athlete or a spectator might see. Multiple cameras, wires running everywhere and whatever. It's impressive looking to a certain extent, if not somewhat dangerous. So if you watch the Olympic trials or the World Championships, the World Championships at Oregon were a great idea. They redid the complex, the entirety of the facility in the last few years. But go back 4 or 5 years ago, there were wires all over the track that are running, for start sensors and for scoreboards and everything. It's crazy how busy and how many wires were run. And I think they got a couple of cable runs so that they were able to put some of those underground and make things a little bit tidier, basically. So the front-end complexity stuff is multiple cameras and maybe running a wire over the track for power, stuff like that. Like, that sort of thing is tricky. So the most complex front-end thing that I've done, there are 2 that kind of come to mind. Conference track championships this past spring at Oklahoma Baptist had 2 finish lines, and so one for wind reverse and one for kind of everything else. And it really wasn't that even complex. I'm just stating it. Like, I have a lot of those black with yellow lidded boxes, and both boxes had a camera in it that was going to that finish line. They had a laptop running the scoreboard software. They had a battery backup. They had all of the scoreboard power and data cables. They had Ethernet cables to run to the fiber optic boxes and then run to the camera and the data links that was running there. Just everything was there. So like, everything came out at that location and then went back in. So I was able to cart all these boxes out, put one at the common finish, one at the wind reverse, bring everything out, and then put it back in at the end of the day, go in reverse. And that's always my recommendation, is to create the things that you need the way that you actually need them to operate. And then cross country, the most complex thing was regional championships, where we ran 2 concurrent systems. 2 redundant systems. One that was the main system and also had a split mat that was out on course, and then one that was at the finish line only in case of absolute catastrophic failure. Both had Finish Links cameras and Identilinks cameras associated with them. They were both on different power sources. Was it necessary? No, not at all. But in case something really dramatically went wrong, we had that ability. And we also had all the athletes double chipped. If you could go back and do it again, I would actually probably get rid of the second camera system and just run a reader as another backup. But ultimately, the double chipping was really what saved us, and so that produced data lightning quick, and everything worked out brilliantly. So anyway, that's the most complex kind of front end stuff. Back end stuff. Back end stuff is stuff that you don't see. It's usually database stuff, and I've talked about it in other videos as far as how I handle it. I have two kind of completely walled off sections. I have the timing aspect of it that's handled by finish links or maybe run signups, race day scoring or whatever. And then I've got the database side of it, which is, well, I guess in race day scoring's particular case is kind of both. But, normally I've got Meet Pro and I've got finish links, and I don't have them do anything that's the same. I use Meet Pro to set things up the way that they need to be set up, and then I let them go over to finish links, and I let finish links do the timing. That's it. They are kind of separate entities in that regard. I don't want to be trying to maneuver stuff within finish links to make a situation better. I want to set it up in Meet Pro and let links just do its thing. And so that's how I've been able to do things for the most part. And little things come up, like cross-country relays and how they handle that, and mixed gender events, and trying to split scores out of that. There's always always some like little tweak that coaches want, once or twice a season. But I'm doing most of that work in Meet Pro because that's actually where things are kind of being set up. And I have a kind of a basic idea with, it's called computational analysis or computational thinking, where I break everything down to its most simple and basic parts. And really what it comes down to with racing, running in particular, is how does an athlete receive the signal to start doing something, and how do they stop? And so when it comes to that, it really opens up a lot of doors. So you think about what they would experience in that time, or what we would watch them doing. And so that's really kind of how I set it up. How does Meet Pro get a start, or finish links get a start, and then how do we get the finish, and all the stuff in between? What information do we need to produce along the way? That's it. So I don't find it to be particularly complex. I just think it's a problem that needs to be solved, and break it down into those parts, and then pretty much I'm good to go. Now, the most complex back-end thing that I've done was actually somewhat complex in the front end as well. It was a Red Bull Pump Track World Championships back in 2017 or so, which was here in the state, and I was providing cameras to make sure that we had, I was providing the cameras and scoreboard. And so I had to build the boards, and I built them out in the software over the course of several days. And tweak them, and really wanted to make sure that we'd get there and it'd all look crisp and beautiful all the time. And they did. I was really happy with it. But I did spend quite a number of hours, maybe 15, 20 hours, working on the scoreboards leading up to the event. The other thing I did is I actually went and did a site visit, because the area, the place we were doing it, didn't have Google Maps done, and ultimately it's a really complex kind of organism. Pump track is something I've got no experience with, and I couldn't find any information on the actual track that they were using. And you can see, I'll put it up on screen. Additionally, they had two different start and finish lines. They had one for qualifying, and then they had one for the finish line, or for the races, for the knockout races. And so we had to kind of move some of the equipment around in between them. And then we had different styles of racing. The qualifying portion was a Formula One style, kind of cafeteria style, drop in when you wanted to and do a lap. And so I was thinking about all the ways that we could do this in finish links, and came up with a really nice and slick way. But ultimately, it didn't work because we couldn't get the race result reader connected in time with links. And that's what happens sometimes when you've got two people that are handling disparate parts that can't physically meet up beforehand. Now, it ended up being neither here nor there, because we were still able to use the scoreboard just manually, and then for the knockout races, the cameras were still super handy, and we're able to figure out who won each race and without too much difficulty. But yeah, it's definitely tricky, but again, all I was thinking about was like, all right, how do we do this, and what do I need, and breaking it down into simpler parts, and ended up being just fine. So that is my philosophy on difficult things or challenging things in complexity. I hope it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to me. But if it helps you in your next complex event, please feel free to leave a like down below. And if you watch this whole video and you're not a subscriber, like why should I hit the subscribe thing? It's fine. I don't email you or anything. Thank you.